All right, everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Game Changer Show. I'm your host, Mike McKay, based out of Jacksonville, Florida. And each and every week, we do this show with people who are changing the game of real estate all over the country. And this is a live show, guys. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments for our guests to answer. If anyone's in the Jacksonville area and you're in sales and you've been thinking about getting into real estate, send me a DM on Instagram. We are hiring salespeople for our acquisitions team. This week on the show, we have Justin Taylor. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey man, I appreciate you for bringing me on. I'm excited to answer questions and talk. So let's go.
Let's do it. Um, so, for the people who don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate and how that's kind of led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so just backtracking a little. I did my first deal in 2019. It was a duplex I bought, but I didn't really do really start my business till like 2022. In 2019, I was finishing up my college degree and with the hopes of maybe going on to get my doctorate in physical therapy. So around 2019 to 2020, I was actually looking at graduate school. I met another investor with about 30 rental properties, and at the time, he kind of joined a mastermind, and so I worked as his acquisitions guy. A lot of people after their bachelor's degree, they have what's called a gap year before they
Hmm.
go on to graduate school. And so I was kind of in that gap year where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give this a try. I just read Rich Dad Poor Dad, so I was on a Rich Dad Poor Dad high back in 2019, and I started working for this other investor who was a real estate agent, had 30 rental properties, and he was also trying to kind of get in that investor role. So I kind of, I met him. And at the time, he said, "Hey, I need a guy that's boots on the ground, going out, making appointments." So we went from 30 rental properties to a little over 100 rental properties under his name. I was his acquisitions guy. It wasn't my business. And so I got to experience locking up deals and watching them get across the finish line. And we did, 70 something deals just from 30 to 100. And so I got to see, that we did that in about 2 years. And so I got to see at the end of the 2 years, his wife retired and she doesn't have to go back to work. They're having another kid and they're in their late 30s. So I kind of got to live vicariously through him. I got to, I didn't have to have the financial burden of like making mistakes with marketing because it was all on the line with him. And at the end of the 2 years, I was like, I'm gonna go give this a try myself. So I
Mm.
had a conversation with him and I said, because his kind of what me and him talked about was once I get to 100 doors, I'm happy. So we got to 100 doors, and he said, I talked to him. I said, hey, now that we've reached the goal, I want to start building long term wealth for myself. And so that was back in 2022, maybe late 2021. And I jumped ship, took a lot of that knowledge I learned, and we, real quickly grew to over 20 something doors. I think 27 now, and we've shifted focus from are we flippers, wholesalers, rentals. So we've gone through all those learning curves of just trying to figure out who we are as a company, and so it's fast forward to 2024. I mean, I've been doing this on my own for about 2 years now, and um, yeah, that's my. I mean, I can ramble more, but just to try to stop myself from talking too much, that's my quick summary of just how I got started and where I'm at now.
Gotcha. Okay. So, it sounds like you kind of went through a couple of different phases of your business. You said, rental stuff, flipping, wholesaling. What does your business look like today?
Primary wholesalers who flip one house at a time, and we'll buy a rental if it's just a home run deal. Um,
Hmm.
that's our mission statement. That's who we are, and that the reason we're so specific on that is because we acquired a couple $1 million worth of rentals and we were broke. And when I say we have a partner that we've just been doing it 50-50 together, and it sounds sexy on paper to be like, hey, let's grow to 20 doors real quick, but you can get to 20 doors and still be broke. So my
Hmm.
real estate coach was like, hey, you're doing it backwards. You need to build some active income first. So this past year we've made major changes where we're like, screw the rentals, it's active income first, flips and wholesales. And
Mm,
so for us, we're a wholesale first company.
mm,
We acquired 10 flips at the same time, and we still ran into issues because we were like, well, what about all the mortgage payments and the amount of cash needed to keep that many projects? So for us, we're really good at acquisitions. Like I said, I worked for that other guy who I got a lot of experience. So I'm comfortable making offers. I'm comfortable saying no. So that's why, my partner and I was like, let's just be a wholesale company. We
mm,
scaled down on the flips and said, we'll only flip one or two at a time. We don't want to flip 10. We feel like scaling to 15, 20 wholesale deals a month is like where we want to go. And
mm,
then once we really have that active income dialed in, then will start scaling the passive income. I think a lot of people get it kind of messed up where they say, hey, let's go buy rentals, but you got to have that active income. And for us, the active income is wholesaling, and we'll cherry pick those flips, and then we'll buy rentals. If I do a lot of the burrs. If we can do like a cash out where we can pay ourselves that wholesale fee, we still owe our wholesale company a wholesale fee. So we won't
mm.
buy the rental unless the rentals can pay the wholesale company. So that's kind of how our mindset shifted over the last couple of years.
Gotcha. And then why did you decide to keep the 1 to 2 flips a month versus just doing straight wholesale?
I like flipping. We have a crew that we try to keep them busy every month, and because we like right now, I've got 18 wholesale deals that are under contract that we're actively pushing out. Our
Uh-huh.
contractor just finished up his last flip, so he's ready for the next one. So now that he's ready, we might look at those 18 and say which one of these do we want to flip. But while the flips are going, we don't even worry about it. For us, we don't want to do more. Like I said, that's what we're comfortable with.
Hmm.
We might scale it later, but for us, it's about focus and clarity. And
Mm,
we grew a lot of rentals, we grew a lot of flips, but then we hit this ceiling where because we're not focused, we just start getting spread thin, get put in cash crunches, and
mm,
for us, it just boils down to just clarity and focus. Like we chose this is what we want to do, and for us it's a lot of people. I think what people misunderstanding about scaling isn't bigger, scaling is just more efficient. So
mm,
we don't want to get bigger until we're more efficient. So 1 to 2 flips is what we're comfortable with, and we don't have the privilege to grow until we're more efficient. So we're just right now, I'm in a phase where we're trying to prove that we can be really efficient before we get more. So
mm.
that's what scaling means in our eyes right now is how efficient can we be before we get our hands on more flips and more rentals? Because I've definitely put myself in some cash crunches from not being focused, and it's not fun being there.
And like, what are the things that either you have focused on in the last year or that you are focusing on going forward in order to get more efficient?
For us right now, what we're focusing on is just something tactical. Is our buy box. So like, how clear are we on our buy box? So we made a very basic buy box, but we're tweaking it. Like what my coach said is my partner should never have to approach me and say, "Hey, is this a deal?" He should be able to go to the buy box and say, this is the company's buy box." So like, how clear is that? The other thing is,
Mm,
as wholesalers, we spend a lot of money on marketing, but we haven't kept track of our KPIs, our marketing KPIs. So right
mm,
now, our real estate coach wants us to just be consistent at updating our marketing KPIs every single day. We want 6 months of data so that whenever we do say, hey, we want to scale, we can look at 6 months of data and make educated decisions. Whereas before, we were just making decisions off of gut feel. Like we feel
mm,
like we want to do this campaign, or we feel like we want to do this marketing campaign, but we were never making decisions off of history and data. And so that's one of the things that we're focusing on is just every single day taking 10 minutes going to plug in our KPI numbers. And when I say KPIs, that's key performance indicators. So, like how many offers, phone calls, appointments, contracts are getting signed. And what happens is we start looking at conversion rates. Like, how many offers is it taking to get an appointment? How many appointments is it taking to get a contract? How many contracts that we lock up to wholesale? How many of those fall through, like on average? And once you start getting data like that, you can then throw money at it and say, if I want to throw X amount of dollars in it, I know it's going to do this because this is what the last 6 months showed.
mm.
And so we feel like we're at a point financially that we could throw money at the business, but it's like throwing money in a fire pit. It's just, you're just going to
Sure.
waste money because you're not operationally efficient. So when I say operationally efficient, like how well do we know our numbers? Every
Mm,
single person I've seen that's super successful knows their numbers. They know how to make decisions 90 days in the future. I can't do
mm,
that because I haven't taken the time to just stay focused on our KPIs as a business owner. And so that's kind of our current phase. Once we have that 6 months of data, then we can say, hey, now we can scale. Um,
mm.
so that's, yeah, I mean, those are two things we're focusing on right now.
What are some things that you noticed when you like kind of first started tracking those KPIs?
Um, that's a loaded question. So one of the things that I think, I'm just trying to think back on the last few months. So one of the things we've noticed is I mean, we're in a mastermind, so we can kind of compare other KPIs, and so that's a quick gold nugget is just be in
Hmm.
a community. I mean, if you wanna scale your company, be in a community. So just a quick gold nugget right there. But one of the things we notice is, we're spending X amount of dollars on this marketing campaign, and we're seeing other people, they're producing on average this amount of leads. And for example, PPL is one of our main marketing pay per lead. Another
Hmm.
company might be closing 1 out of 10 leads. Well, if we're closing 1 out of 30, something's off. There's a sales issue. There's a follow up
Mm,
issue. Like, why is this company closing 1 out of 10 leads? I think the issue is when you don't know that information, people think let's spend more money on marketing, but what if you could close more deals just by being more efficient in your sales process? So I think for us that was something we noticed. I think it might have been like 1 out of 20 leads, and we were like, but why is our coach doing 1 out of 10? So we made some tweaks to the sales process. And, how aggressive are we being with getting a hold of a new lead? It was just simple things like we might call that lead once a day for 3 days, and if they don't answer, put them on a drip sequence. Whereas our coach was 3 times a day for the first 7 days, and just that small tweak, now you're getting a hold of more leads, and that doesn't cost you any money. And
mm,
so that's one of the things that we notice is like just how aggressive were we being in that initial point of contact with new leads. I mean, that small change right there, now we're getting a hold of more people, and the ripple effect that causes to how many more deals you're closing. There's just these tweaks you can make in your business that that doesn't cost you money.
mm.
You want to make those you want to make those tweaks before you spend money. And so
Sure.
that's what we're doing is just getting really operationally efficient at all those things so that when you do throw money at the business, the only thing it's going to do is grow.
Mm,
Um, that's what KPI is going to do for you.
gotcha. And then I know we were talking a bit offline how, you feel like you guys are pretty good at acquisitions. What do you think has allowed you to be able to be good at acquisitions and buying properties at good discounts?
You know, acquisitions. I just a John. Are you familiar with John Martinez?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of people in the real estate industry, they know who John Martinez is. He's a sales guy, and um, I remember a podcast he did, and he talked about how people misunderstand that being in sales is your personality. Being in sales is learnable. Now, don't get me wrong. There's people out there that might have better cultural index. Like they might culturally, their personality might fit a salesperson better. But anybody can do sales, and sales is learnable. And what I mean by that is we had this personality test that I took. I am not a sales guy. On paper, I'm not a sales guy. Um, but I got good at sales. I understood just certain sales techniques, just the sales process. I think I heard somebody say, what's the karate guy that says you shouldn't be afraid of somebody that knows 10,000 different types of attacks. It's the person that's done the same attack over and over. That's the person you should be afraid of. I
Hmm.
think John Martinez used that analogy. He said it's the same thing with sales. It's not all the different sales techniques. It's the person that picks a sales technique and just does it over and over and over and just gets really good at it. And so we've been really obsessed over this is our sales process and we're sticking to it.
Mm,
Um, and we just do it over and over and over and over and over. Now we have coaches that we might make some tweaks, and he's like, "Hey, throw this in there," so we tweak
mm,
it. Then we stick to it. We do it over and over and over, and so I think that's what's made us really good. Is we have a sales process, and we actually make the calls. I think another I think another thing is people get so stuck into what's the sales process. The sales process is pick up the phone and say, "Hey, do you want to sell your house?" That could be your process. Can you do that? Can you do that 100 times a week? And then there's no need to go get a fancy sales process if you're not doing that at first. Um,
mhm,
I think what our real estate coaches taught us is you can't steer a parked car. Like if you're not making 100 calls a week, I'm not going to give you a sales process. The person that's making 100 calls a week, now you can start building on their sales process.
mm,
So don't get caught up into like what's the script to use. Like go make 100 calls a week, and then you can constantly tweak that script you're using. Um, it's super simple, just a super quick. Like if you're trying to get your first deal, like I mean, you could, you can go on, just look on Zillow and make an offer on every single house out there. Screw the
mm,
price, just get used to getting told no. Obviously, there's paid ways, like you can go pull a list and start cold calling, but I mean, if you're not making the calls, nothing else matters in this business.
mm.
Um, it's that simple.
What is your guys' sales process?
I mean, so we have a script we follow, super
Mhm,
simple. We set the stage,
mhm,
and I can go through it super quick. It's set the stage. Hey, and a lot of what we do is virtual. We do have some
mhm,
in-person stuff, but super simple. Hey, Mr. Seller, do you have 10 to 15 minutes to talk? Boom. That's super simple. Because if they don't have 10 to 15 minutes to talk and you start rambling, they're immediately going to be turned off. So that's
mm,
for us, it's setting the stage. As soon as they say, yeah, we've got 10 to 15 minutes to talk, well, hey, Mr. Seller, we are a real estate investment company. We don't buy every single house we look at. So if for some reason we get to the end of this call uh, and you decide not to sell, that's completely okay. No reason to take any next steps. That's part two. Give them
mm,
permission to say no. We just want to let them know like, hey, you're not. This is everything I'm telling you. I've learned through John Martinez and other coaches. Like, just give them permission to say no. Next
mm,
step is, hey, can you tell us about the house? They tell us about the house. The whole point of that isn't to actually hear about the house. We just want to get them talking so we can use that, catch some pain points. Anytime they bring up pain points, we want to ask why, like, or what have you done to solve that, or can you tell me more about that? That's where you start having these softening and serrated questions and statements and all that fancy stuff. And then
mm,
it's super simple. Once they're done talking, we've now gotten to that point of like, Mr. Seller, I'm confused. Why sounds like a great house? Why would you even consider selling? The whole point of that is to figure out why they want to sell, and then
mm,
they're going to tell you why they want to sell. And that's when you can bring them in and say, hey, this is what we can do to help you overcome that solution. My biggest thing in our sales process is our value is not our price. Our value is to helping them overcome objections and helping them. We're a real estate solutions company. If price is what you're needing, we're not your buyer. We can help
mm,
you. We can help you sell this house. We can help you sell it quick. And so we want to know what is their problem, and we just help them overcome it. And then we just talk numbers. We get really good at running numbers and making offers. We always tell them, hey, it takes us a good 20 to 30 minutes to do some underwriting. I don't want to take up your time. Do you care if I call you back later? So we always do a two-step close process where that
mm,
first phone call is not about negotiating. It's just building some rapport. Right there on the first phone call, we've pulled up the house. We're doing what's called price anchors, where we'll talk about a couple different properties that sold recently for cash. Let them marinate on those price anchors, which is really just let's say their house is worth 150,000, but we saw a house that sold for X amount. We'll say, hey, Mr. Seller, we noticed this house sold for 50K. What are your thoughts on that? It's not an offer. We're just seeing how they respond to it. And then we say, hey, can we call you back in 20, 30 minutes? Let us do some underwriting and we'll call you back. Call number two, super simple. Hey,
mm,
this is what we came up with. Does it work? If it works, we write it up. If it doesn't work, it turns into a follow up. Um,
mm.
Anybody can do that process. I know I just spent a few minutes talking about it, but I wouldn't even get caught up in any of that if you're not just making the calls. Just pick up the phone and say, "Do you have a house you would sell?" And
Yeah,
just start with that. Start with that. Um,
yeah.
I mean, I've the process I just told you. We've probably done over a few thousand of those calls this year.
Mm.
Um, but if you're not just picking up the phone saying, "Hey, do you have a house for sale?" There's no need to worry about anything past that.
What made you guys decide to do the mostly virtual model versus going out to the houses?
We go across the whole state of Arkansas, and I'm not
Oh,
driving six
yeah,
hours to go see a house.
fair enough.
Um, Yeah, so we do have boots on the ground. Like if it's a house that we need photos, we can get local realtors to take photos. We've analyzed enough deals that if somebody tells me about the house, I can probably on that first phone call tell you what it's going to cost to fix it up. I mean, if we're in a Class C neighborhood where most houses are built in 1990 and the seller told me they've lived there for 30 years and they haven't done any updating to it, I'm already assuming a full rehab.
Mm.
Um, if the seller told me the house was built in 2015, I might look at a light rehab. You can just ask questions like that. We have a set list of questions we'll go through with the seller, and the virtual model just helps us. We can analyze without actually seeing the house. So that's if you're out there and thinking a virtual model is not possible, it is possible.
Yeah. What do you do? And I don't know, like Arkansas, the market that well. But like, how do you know what if you can offer in different markets? Like, for example, in like, around where we are, and like maybe in Jacksonville, like Duval County, there's a lot more kind of investor demand. So I know I can offer, if I'm going to wholesale it, I could offer stronger here than I could offer somewhere that's kind of more rural, which is a lot of stuff that we buy personally. But how do you know that across a whole state? I feel like that's a lot of like territory to cover.
Yeah, so that's why we do the two-step close process. We want to let the sellers, hey, give us a little bit of time to go do some research. So we had a property in Waldron, Arkansas. We've never done a
Mm,
deal there. Seller called us. I did some research. I talked to several different realtors. I learned there's no Walmart in this city. There's no activity. And so the more I start learning, like we get really good at market analysis. Like, put me in any
mm,
city in the US. I'm going to call five different realtors. I'm going to go call all the property managers. I'm going to go to Zillow, see any flips that recently sold. I'm going to call those realtors, just doing research. And then, so like when we get into a new city, we might come across a lead like, oh, we haven't done this city yet. So I let the seller know, hey, give me the data, make some calls, do some research. If it's not a hot lead, I'll call that seller back the next day. If it is a hot lead, I might speed the process up, but we just have to do a little research, and we have a platform called PropStream where we can see everything that's sold recently. So, if I see six other cash sales that sold for X amount, then I know there's investor activity there. So I might make what I call a ballpark offer, like, hey, Mr. Seller, I saw these properties sold for X amount. Are we wasting your time if we call you back to similar offers? And we've had
mm,
people say, yeah, don't call me back, or we've had people say, no, call me back. So there's a lot of that happens.
mm,
And so, but to answer your question, it's just that's why we do the two-step close process. It gives us the time to do a little extra due diligence. And we do have cities that we're like, if a lead comes across, we don't want it. And that's part of trial and error. We make a lot of phone calls, and because of that, we know which cities to stay out of.
mm.
So that's what we do.
What would make you want to stay out of one of these cities?
Like there's uh, maybe we just don't see a lot of activity. Maybe we don't see a lot of investor activity specifically. Maybe they've got the average resale is at a certain price where we're like, we don't want to do anything because
Mm,
it's just crappy houses that are selling. Maybe low income houses. We don't want to deal with just making a couple bucks off of a house that took us 2 months to wholesale. Like
mm,
anything we wholesale, we're like, we want to be able to find a buyer in a few weeks. We don't want to, if it takes us 2 months to find a special buyer because there might be a buyer out there for that, we're not wholesaling that. So
mm,
it's just, I wish I had an exact answer off of these are our metrics, but we don't really have metrics. It's a lot of trial and error.
Mm,
Um, I think the moral of the story is like go take action because our processes just take a lot of action and constantly tweak and pivot.
gotcha. And then how are you handling dispositions being across like an entire state?
Yeah, we have the investor lift platform for
Okay.
Dispo.
Uh,
Um, we it's really good for just if you're trying to dispo deals statewide. We cold call a lot of buyers. We go in there and like if we get
mm,
a neighborhood that we haven't done a deal yet, we'll go call every single buyer in that neighborhood and say, hey, we noticed you bought a property. Would you be interested in buying this one right down the road
mm,
from you? So a lot of we have a virtual assistant that does a lot of cold calling and we're on the phones too. I mean, dispositions is the same thing as acquisitions. If you're not as a wholesaler, if you're not making the calls, the business isn't going to work out for you.
mm, gotcha. Um, no, that makes sense. Oh, you know what we were talking about offline too that I wanted to hit is local banks. You mentioned
Yeah.
that for your rental properties, you work with a lot of local banks when you go to do the refinance. And could you maybe talk about how that process is a little bit different than maybe going to one of these national DSCR lenders?
Yeah, I mean we've done some national banks because for whatever reason we had some bad deals that we couldn't secure local financing. Maybe they just had certain parameters, so we went to a little more aggressive lending with some national stuff. But uh, local banks, in my opinion, are always going to be the best lending terms, like for the
Mm,
burrs. Um, we've got every single rental property we've bought is just we've got an Excel sheet. We call a bank, say, hey, can we talk to the guy that lends on cash out refinances or any DSCR loan for investors? And we send them our information. They let us know their terms, and we put it in the Excel sheet. This lender offers this. We call the next bank. We spend I want to say during our first few rentals in that specific city, we called probably 30 different banks,
mm,
and we just said which one offers the best terms, and we said, all right, let's pull the trigger with this bank. And as you get more familiar with certain cities, you don't have to do that every time because now we're constantly checking rates and which banks are doing what. Like we had a bank that was doing 85% cash out on a 25-year term, and we were like, we're set. And last year, for whatever reason, they said we're not doing those anymore. They just cut
mm,
us. They cut us off. They cut us off and said we're not lending to anybody like this. So we had to get back on the phones and call several more banks. We found another lender that did a cash out, but they were only at 75%, and that threw us for a loop because we were analyzing stuff off of 85. So we had to pivot and say,
uh,
okay, now we gotta change our offers if we're buying it as a rental. So there's a lot of that happens. I mean, but it's the same thing. If make the calls, call every bank and ask them what their terms are. I mean, just like I said with acquisitions and dispositions, you just got to make the calls and talk to every single lender out there and find the one that works best for you. Because um, my first real estate investment property was a duplex I house hacked, and I had 3 or 4 lenders tell me no, and finally we found a lender that said yes because it was my first deal. Nobody wants to lend to a college student with no income. So you just have to get used to getting told no and go call all the lenders out there until you find somebody that maybe their lending capacity they're a little bit more hungry to get a deal out there.
mm,
So I mean, people, you got to know how lenders work. There are lenders out there. They're not going to go work with the average Joe. They want a deal handed to them on a silver platter. They don't want to have to do any extra work. And then there are lenders out there that are new and building their clientele.
mm,
They'll lend to anybody because they just need their first deal. Um, Not every single bank follows the same protocol, same procedure. They've got national laws and stuff they have to follow, but they've all got different terms, and you just have to find the one that works. I think that was my biggest learning curve. I thought if one bank said no, then all the banks are going to say no, but that's not
mm.
true.
What are the terms that you're noticing are better when you're working with the local banks versus like a national lender?
A lot of national lenders, biggest thing I've noticed is like there's prepayment penalties. Like, hey, if you sell this property in under 5 years, you got to pay a prepayment penalty, whereas like local banks may not have that.
Uh,
Um, Like we've got a local bank. It's called a 5 4 3 2 1, meaning in year one, if you sell it, you owe us 5%. In year
Mhm,
two, you owe us 4%. In year three, you owe us, and it just keeps going down. Whereas with like local banks, I've never heard of those penalties and stuff.
mhm,
Um, I mean, I don't notice. I've only done a national bank once uh, for a little portfolio loan where we refied like 4 properties together.
uh,
So I wouldn't say I've got enough experience to be like, hey, these are all the differences between national banks versus local. We do use a national bank for like our flips. We might use like a bridge loan through this bank called Kiavi
mhm.
or like Lima One or Dominican. I think that's another one, but Kiavi is like a main national lender that we use for like bridge loans if we're doing a flip.
Mhm. Gotcha. Are they are the terms of the loan always shorter with local banks? As you mentioned, like 25 years. I think you mentioned 20 years at one point. Are they ever 30 that you've seen with the local banks or?
I so that's a good question. I do have a national lender that's doing a 30-year for us, but they're only doing like 70% cash out. All my local banks, mostly 20, maybe 25 if you're lucky, but uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a coincidence or I don't know what other markets are, but I don't see 20 to 20 more than 25 at most. I haven't found a local bank that does 30. Uh, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you guys are, I guess, well, because you're buying them direct, you're able to still make the numbers work with a 20-year loan or a 25-year loan.
Yeah, I mean, my market's very unique because the home sales are a little like that. I guess 150 to 250,000 is like the resale value,
Hmm.
and some markets, in your market, you're probably starting off purchasing houses at that price. Well, I guess if it depends on like if you're doing like some higher end flips, but for us, like if we're buying houses below 100,000, we
Hmm.
know that it's most likely going to cash flow as a rental when we refi it out. Um, like I know a guy that's in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's like, I can't find anything that's going to rent, but everything he's buying is above 300,000, but rents are maybe 2,500. And
Yeah.
so it's very market specific.
Yeah. You were saying you only keep a rental if it's a home run deal. So like, how do you define what a home run deal is?
Um, a home run deal for us is because we do the burrs. Can we buy it cash and then when we refi it, pull out the wholesale fee, which is like 10,000 is kind of our average wholesale fee. So if we
Ah.
can pull it out, if we can do an actual cash out where we buy it at a deep enough discount, cash out 10K to pay our wholesale company, and it meets the DSCR requirement. Bank, because if we're taking it to the bank, they're gonna praise it. They're gonna look at cash flow, and
Hmm.
they're not just gonna lend on anything. Most local banks aren't just giving you straight LTV, like, hey, here's straight 80% of LTV. They're gonna also look at what's called the debt service. Where you just got to plug that in, and then they'll lend based off of that. So we just got to make sure it meets those numbers.
Gotcha. We were also talking a little bit offline about, mindset stuff. You want to share about some things that you do for mindset?
Yeah, let me think. I think specific to the real estate business, um, mindset wise, you can't take things personal. Like you just have to call a lot of people in this business. Uh, you just have to get used to getting told no, and you have to almost get numb to getting told no. And so mindset wise, it's hard. Like I remember when I first started, I would get told no, and the rest of the day I want to go watch Netflix. And I did have days like I don't want to say that out loud, but I would have somebody chew me out, and I'd be like, I'm not picking up the phone again. I'm gonna go play on my phone and watch
Mm,
Netflix. I need to recover. Maybe go play a round of golf. Whereas now, if somebody tells me no, I hang up. I'm just moving on to the next phone call.
mm,
Whatever they had a bad day, whatever. I need to make the next call. I'm very clear on how many calls I have to make each day, and I can't let somebody telling me no affect me. Meeting my KPIs every day. So that's really the biggest mindset thing is just don't take things personal. Um, I read this book, and I wish I could remember the title of it, but he told a story of his sales team. They were giving out an award for the person that got the most no's. It was like this big thing they celebrated. Like, hey, whoever gets the most no's, we're giving you a paid vacation and a trophy. And this was a quarterly and annual event. And the guy that got told no the most, he goes up there, he grabs his trophy, he sets it, he goes back, sits back down, and he sets it to his other trophy. Do you know what the other trophy is?
Most money earned,
Yeah,
I would
for
guess.
the
Yeah.
most sales. Yeah, so
Yeah.
for the guy that also made the most sales. So long story short is the guy that got told no the most also did the most sales. And so I just always remember that story of just don't be afraid to get told no. Just kind of that mindset shift of like they're not saying no to you. They don't know who you are, and uh, they just that doesn't define you as a person. Because I know with me, it's very easy to get caught up in that mind battle of am I meant to do this? Like you can go 3 or 4 months without getting a deal, um, and you just got to have that mindset shift of like you got to keep going, and you're gonna get that first deal. Like if you're trying to get that first deal, like forget forget what it feels like. You got to set your emotions to the side and just go make a lot of calls and a lot of offers. And just remember that story of like the guy that got told no the most also got the trophy for the most sales.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most applicable mindset thing I could probably say in this business. If you ask anybody around me, I could probably ramble too much about mindset stuff, so I'll try to stop there.
Well, I'm curious because I do a lot of mindset stuff. So, well, I mean, what other things do you do, whether it's even related to the business or just personally?
Man, personally, I mean the biggest mindset thing is just man my quiet time in the morning. Just I try to read my Bible every morning um, and just really trying to keep God first. And I know it sounds kind of cliche, but man, for me, what keeps me motivated is feeling purpose.
Mm,
Feel like I have a purpose to go change people's lives, and financially speaking, like I feel like God's put it on my heart to go make a lot of money so I can give away a lot of money.
mm,
I feel like if I'm not keeping God center in my business, it's I don't. My wife for my first flip, I gotta move my printer out the way. But she wrote this verse for Psalm 127:1. I keep it hung in my office, but it says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain." And what that means to me is, if I'm going to build this massive business, I want God right there next to me, and I don't want to build it without Him because anything I build without Him, I got to maintain on my own. And I'm not, but something I can build with him. I've got him helping me keep it up there, and I'm a Christian, and my mindset on just keeping God right there center is huge to me. So I know there's a lot of people out there that might think I'm crazy for saying that, but that's just my story.
gotcha. What is your vision for your business for, let's call it, the next 3 years?
My vision for the business, I started this for the freedom. Most people want to get into it for the time freedom and buy back your time. So hopefully over the next 3 years, like I said, I'm in that mastermind with seven figure flipping. So I've got people that their levels ahead of me. And so I'm watching other people have conversations like they're talking about hiring their CEO so that they can
Mm,
get their freedom back. And so I would love to see this business at a point where maybe I'm having conversations of hiring a CEO to buy back my time and
mm,
go focus on the next phase of life. If that's, I would love to travel and speak and maybe become like a paid speaker. I feel like that would just be so much fun, and I feel like that's where I'm happiest is when I'm speaking and sharing and teaching people how to just change their lives, and um, that's where I see my business headed is just eventually bringing in a team that can take a lot of this off my plate. Um, the business's vision, that's my vision. I guess your question
mhm,
was the business's vision.
mm,
Selfishly, that's not the business's vision. That's my business, and the reason I want to clarify that is if I'm going to hire people, I can't hire them based off of what I want. I need them to buy into something. And this is something that my coach was talking to me about because he asked me the same thing. What is your business's vision? And I said that, and he was like, "Well, that's selfish." He was like, "You can't hire people and that be their purpose. And so it was kind of cool because my business needs to have a separate vision from what my personal vision is. And
Mm,
so my business is a full solutions real estate company helping each and every homeowner get out of a solution, getting out whatever solution they are. So hopefully in 3 years, we're helping 10 to 15 homeowners every single month. That's
mm,
our specific vision for the company. So like if you're trying to build a vision for the company, like what's that thing that when you hire people, they can buy into it and say, I'm helping 10 to 15 homeowners every single month. If I hired somebody and they said I'm helping Justin reach financial freedom, that's selfish and that's not how you build a company. Now, don't get me wrong, that's my personal vision. I'm using my company to
mm.
get there, but what is the visions of the company? Sorry, I kind of there was a two-part question answer to that question.
Sure.
But that's something that my coach was teaching me, and so we've just getting super clear on like what's your visions company.
Yeah. And what does your team look like today?
Yeah, we so last year we had almost 10 people, made no money. So the size of the team has nothing to do with how efficient you can
Sure.
be.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've actually scaled down, kind of like what I mentioned, to get more efficient. But it's a team of four right now. I've got me, my
Mm,
partner, acquisitions, and a virtual assistant. So, and then I don't really include the contractors and realtors as part of the team. That's more of just like services that we work with. But I mean, we do have a contracting crew of people we keep busy, and our realtor we keep busy. But
mhm.
that's not my business's team.
Gotcha. So what is your current role in the company as like today?
I'm making calls every day on dispo and acquisitions with my. I mean, I've told the acquisitions guy, you better not out dial me, or you better not let me out dial you. So it's not a very big team, but
Yeah.
we're there every day making calls, and I eventually I want to hire another acquisitions guy, maybe, kind of work my way up to the sales manager to the, because I think that was one of my mistakes early on is I own the company. So I was like, I'm the CEO. I don't have to make calls. And that's how I got in a cash buying.
Mm,
Kind of one of the things me and my partner talk about is we're employees of the business. We haven't earned the right to be the CEO until we reach certain goals. And once we
mm,
reach certain goals, then we'll kind of put that CEO hat back on and then talk about hiring. Um,
mm,
so I think that's where a lot of people mess up in building a business is I'm the CEO. I don't have to make calls, but that's so false early on. Like
mm.
you're an employee of your business. You go make the calls.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. How did you hire your acquisitions guy? I'm always curious how people are building their sales teams.
Yeah, I mean so we've got like this funnel through Trello.
Okay.
They kind of like jump through a couple different hoops. So something we're really big on is what we've kind of started implementing recently is just sending them through the cultural index, their personality. Like,
Hmm.
do they match up as a sales guy? And then when they're jumping through those hoops through the hiring process, like, are they doing X, Y, Z on time? And they make it through the funnel and we set up the interviews. We like them and give them this skeleton script to make the calls. If they do good on that, like, are they, we say, hey, whatever your goal is, if you achieve that goal during the, like when somebody's hired, the first 30 days, you're not actually hired. Like it's very clear. Hey, if you can't even make, your calls every day, you're not going to continue with us past 30 days. So that first
Yeah.
30 days is always a test trial. They got to prove themselves and stay on it. And, um, but yeah, there's some tactics in the funnels and like making them jump through hoops to see if they're gonna because if they're not gonna jump through the hoops during the hiring process, it's not worth it past that.
Yeah.
Um,
What are some of those things that hoops they have to jump through?
yeah, I mean, for example, if it's on Indeed, you've got the resume, and it says, send in a video of yourself uh, talking about, who you are, why you want this job.
Mm,
That could be like the first hoop. If you're not willing to just take a few minutes to do that, then how do I know you're gonna? Because a lot of acquisition guys are bad at detail, um, and which is nothing wrong with that because they're sales guy, they're go getters, but there's still a detail side to it. Updating your notes in the CRM and filling out paperwork when you get a signed contract, and so like as a sales guy, if you don't want to go take a few minutes to send in a 30-second video, how can we
Mm,
trust that, you're also going to update your CRM? And so it
hmm.
just kind of filters out a lot of who's going to fit our team.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, we're getting close to the end here, and there's always two questions I like to ask at the end of every show. First one's kind of fun, which is what is the craziest or most uncomfortable situation you've ever experienced in a real estate deal?
Yeah, so we actually had a deal that every law is a little bit different when the spouse passes away. This was a deal we did in Louisiana. If a spouse passes away, 50% goes to the heirs, the children.
Hmm.
And so this specific deal, we were talking to the wife. The husband passed away. Apparently, this was his third marriage. He had like six children from six wives. He had like six children from two wives ago.
Yeah.
So when he passed away, there's no will. So 50% goes to these six children that the wife has never met. And she was like trying to sell her house, and she's like, "Are you telling me I got to give up 50% to these six children that are ungrateful and I've never met?" um, that was wild because we were just, I don't know, that we always talk about that deal, how we're a full solutions real estate company. And what we had to do is we had to skip trace, find all six people and be like, hey, uh, you, your grandfather or your father or whoever, not your grandfather, but your father had
Uh-huh.
passed away, and he's married to this new lady who gets 50%, but you get 50% because it's naturally went down to you. So very long process. We helped her sell her house, but it was just wild. We always talk about, like, could you imagine, your husband passing away and you're just trying to get out the house, and you got six children you got to split it with that you've never met. Stories like that
Wow.
happen, but we helped her get out of a solution, and it was a very tough process. But we just always talk about, like, could you imagine just having to split 50% of your house that you lived in? You've never met these children. Moral of the story is, for the grandparents, go make a will.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
go make a will so that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Wow, that's
Um,
crazy. That's a crazy law. That's insane.
yeah, yeah. So automatically goes to the heirs if there's no will in place.
Wow.
Like I said, every state's different. I don't know what other states are, but that's what the Louisiana law is.
Gotcha. Well, the second question I always like to ask for kind of people who are newer listening to the show, which is if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you were looking for your first deal, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Probably what I said earlier about just picking up the phone and making offers, because my first deal I got, you get told no and you just be like, oh crap, I can't do this. Just set your feelings to the side, and man, you just got to make those calls.
Hmm.
I keep saying make those calls. That could just really, it's take action. Some people get deals by sending direct mail, and you don't have to make calls for that, but it's just take massive action. And if you mess up, oh well. When you mess up, you're gonna get a lot of feedback on what you have to do different the next time. So you can read all these books, but nothing's gonna give you the feedback that life gives you when you mess up, and that's the best book to read, in a sense. Uh, so I wish I could have, told myself to toughen up a little and don't be afraid to go make more offers. Because if you get told no and your day's ruined, you're in for a rude awakening if you're going to try to grow a business here.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Justin, if people want to reach out to you after the show, um, you know, maybe they're interested in asking you some questions, or maybe they have some deals that you can buy off them. How can they go about reaching out to you?
Yeah, if you're sending me a deal, send it to my email, justin.thehousebuyer@gmail.com. I'm always checking deals there, or you can DM me on Facebook or Instagram. I think my Instagram name was on here, Justin Tave. I guess I don't, I don't know what my, yeah, there it is. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't even know what my Instagram name was, but yeah, there, or you can either, I've even got a phone number for work. My work phone number is 870-729-8704. That's my deal phone number. So that goes straight to my CRM. If you text me a deal, my we'll most likely get back and look at that deal very quick. So, um, or ask me a question, but my VA is going to be reaching out to you if she sees that question on the CRM.
Cool. Well, awesome, man. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.